Okay, everyone, let's see, let me get mine going. It's work when I touch it. Hello. Warren's gone. All right, well, I'll talk loudly until Warren gets here.
Sounds good.
Yeah, welcome everyone, glad to see some young and other ages in the audience. I'm Judy Froese. I'm a clinical professor of marketing here at the Smith School, and I also teach ethical leadership to our executive MBAs, which one of the topics that we touch on there are things like ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues. And we're really thrilled to have here today a TERP, an alum of our school, Apoorva Gandhi. He did his BS here in marketing, and he graduated with honors, which is fantastic. And now he's a senior vice president, and I'm going to make sure I get it right, senior vice president for multicultural affairs at Marriott International, one of the most revered companies really in areas such as this. And so I'm not going to introduce him too much because my first question to him is going to be to tell us a little bit about his background and how you arrived at this position you have today.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. Thanks to the University of Maryland team. Thank you, Joy, for inviting me. Congratulations on putting a big thing together. I know I'm doing this as well at this time, and I know I'm very proud of you, and I know your parents are too. So that's really fantastic. So yeah, my journey towards where I am now started here at the University of Maryland. So I'm very proud TERP. I graduated probably before most of you were born in 1991. I met my wife here at the University of Maryland. She was also a business, so she's a TERP. My sister's a TERP. Her husband's a TERP. So we're a TERP family. There's two of them right there. My two oldest kids are there. Proud TERPs. But it started right here, and then when I was in college here, I worked at a Marriott. And unfortunately, it's not a Marriott anymore, it's a DoubleTree hotel. But I worked as a front desk associate there, checking people in the hotels, and I kind of dug the industry, learned more about it, and really enjoyed it. But when I graduated, I went to work for Accenture, which is a big global consulting firm focused on telecom consulting. Did that for 13 years and loved every minute of it. But then, based on, having a family, getting married, decided, I didn't want to be on the road as much. And I had always remembered back when I worked at Marriott how nicely they treated me when I was just a very junior front desk associate, right? As I say, it was 30 years ago. I had a full head of hair and 30 pounds lighter. So kind to me. And I said, I want to go back and check out Marriott. And they had an internal consulting. So basically, I got to do Accenture style business process reengineering, looking at ways to do business differently. But I got to do it internally for Marriott. So hospitality industry is fun. You get to travel, you see all around the globe. You get these nice upgrades when you go into hotels, stuff like that. But I got to do work for a company like that internally. So I did internal consulting there for about 7 years. So 13 years at Accenture, now 18 years at Marriott. So 7 years doing internal consulting, and then I got asked to work on the project of a lifetime, which was we want you to look at how we're going to reorganize the entire company from being a US company with international offices to truly a decentralized international company. So I got to travel the world, I got to go meet people, I got to know the business really, really well. Once we finished, it was the hardest and best project. It's like the most fun you never want to have again. Yeah. It was that. But then when I finished it, someone came to me and said, we've noticed you've done a lot of diversity and inclusion work as extracurricular activity. So I did it at Accenture as extra work. I enjoyed it. Coming from an immigrant family, it was always part of my growing up. I grew up in a very Indian house, went to a very American school, and sometimes felt like I never fit in well in each one. I know what it's like to be bullied. I know what it's like to be left out of things. So it's something that I always remember. So Mary came to me and said, you've done this extracurricular ESG type work at Accenture. You've done it at Marriott. How would you make it your full-time gig? Yeah, so I was like, okay, it sounds interesting. Talked to a lot of people. And it was a little bit hard for me because I'm used to being a consultant, data-driven processes, business, money, all that stuff. Now it's saying, okay, now you're going to look at some different stuff. What do you think? I didn't really think about it, but I went for it. And it has been the best, most rewarding job I've ever had in my life. 11 years now in this role, and
you know, it has ups and downs, but I love every bit.
That is awesome. So tell us, you know, so many questions that spawned in my mind, but let me go with this one. Tell us, I think people will be curious, what do you do on a day-to-day basis in a job like this?
The best thing about this job is every day is different. So I have multicultural affairs, right? And a lot of times people ask me, well, what is that? Multicultural affairs, what does that really mean? It sounds kind of exotic. Let me just reassure you, my job is not to go around the world having multicultural affairs. Let me say sure. I don't think my family would like that very much. But I get to tell our story externally and work on diversity and inclusion programs to help Marriott be the place, be the hotel company that people know that we welcome all. We welcome all, no matter who you are, where you come from, what your abilities are, or who you love. Period, end of story. We want people to work for us and have great careers. We want all of you to work for us. Come work for us. We're a great company, and now you know someone who's there, right? We want you to stay with us in our hotels. We want you to feel like you belong the minute you walk in, right? I want you to do business with us. So there's that part of my work. I also recently inherited our social impact work. So we have it's ESG, environment, social impact governance. I look after our Serve 360 platform, which is, we call it doing good in all directions, right? So it's helping underserved communities learn about hospitality. It's about volunteerism. It's about being having sustainable business and all kinds of things that go along with that. There are a couple other things I manage, but those are the two that are most important here. Well, what does my day look like? One day I'm working on doing a deal with the NAACP on how do we jointly do a partnership to tell and bring hospitality and jobs to underserved communities. Talk to folks about hospitality. Another day, I was just on a call dealing with human trafficking. There's an organization called ECPAT USA. ECPAT, I'm not exactly sure what ECPAT stands for, any child, but human trafficking, horrible thing. Happens a lot in places that you may not think. Sometimes people think human trafficking just happens somewhere else. Happens in the United States. Happens a lot in hotels. So I was just on a call with an organization called ECPAT USA, which helps try to end this. We have created training on how to help hospitality, front desk workers, housekeepers, notice the signs, and then empower them on what to do about it. Call local law enforcement, call your manager, look for these things. But at Marriott, we said, look, yeah, we're a business, but this is not about business. We're going to share this training with our competitors and with the industry. So I'm really proud to say we've had 930,000 Marriott associates take this training. Think about that now. That's 930,000 more eyes, ears, people keeping an eye out for this horrible scourge of human trafficking. But even more so, when we shared this, we now have had, I saw the numbers, 940,000 industry outside of Marriott. So that's all the competitors, you know. But we said, we want to share this because this is just bad. We don't care about the competition. So I worked on making a deal with that before I walked in here. I deal with racism and discrimination allegations that happen in hotels, and how do we work on resolving those? Because we want to make sure that people feel good when they walk in our doors, that people feel like they're being treated with dignity and respect. So every day is a little bit different.
That is so fast. I mean, can you imagine having a job where that's what you get to work on, is bringing an end to child and human trafficking?
Yeah, I feel very blessed to have this role, and it's also why I don't have any hair on my head.
Yeah, because it's a big job.
It's a big job.
I mean, that's a ton of people trained. That's incredible.
Thank you. We're really proud of it.
It makes me think there are so many issues that employees, that customers, that we're asking companies to take a stand on, right?
Yeah.
Can you take a stand on LGBTQ? Can you take a stand on racism? Can you take a stand on child trafficking? How does Marriott, a company like Marriott, decide which of these companies, we not everybody can do everything. I mean, there's a limit to.
That's right. That's a
Is
really,
there?
no, there is. That's a really important point. I think it's really an important point to talk about at a college campus where there's a lot of issues going on, and this is where people build that love of advocacy and activism. A lot of times starts from where you go to college when you're younger, and and that's a great thing. In the corporate setting, we have to look at things slightly differently. It's not that we don't care about all these issues, but when a corporation takes a stand, you have to be careful. And here's the reason why. We look at things that impact our associates in the workplace, and in some cases at their homes or where there's a blood. And I'll give you an example. Marriott, for a very, very long time, has taken a big stand for LGBTQ equality in all its forms. We believe in that 100%. Why is that? Well, it's because we have many LGBTQ people who work for us. So when marriage equality, this was 5, 6, 7 years ago, was on the docket, we submitted an amicus brief to the Supreme Court saying, we believe in marriage equality. Some people didn't like that, we did that. You said too bad. And here's the reason why. Picture this. You have a gay general manager who lives in deep blue Montgomery County, Maryland, right? He and his husband's marriage is recognized there. They live just as any other couple does. They pay taxes just as any other couple. If someone gets hurt, they have the rights to go into Holy Cross Hospital, just like any other couple. But let's just say there's no marriage equality as the law of the land. And we get a great opportunity for this general manager who's killing it to take on a bigger hotel, let's just say in the great state of Texas, okay? Where there may not have been marriage equality, right? Well, that person is probably gonna say, no, I'm not gonna go down there. They don't recognize my marriage. My tax structure is gonna be different. If heaven forbid, my spouse gets hurt, I can't go visit them. I may not be able to adopt a child, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is not good for our associates, their personal lives. It's also not good for business. We're preventing someone from having a wonderful opportunity to grow in their career, do great things, and help others along the way. So yeah, for many reasons, we spoke out against it, for marriage equality, but also we welcome folks from all walks of life in our hotels. So it's really important for us to stand up for these types of issues. Now look, there are some other issues where we don't wade into the public forum. There are some issues where I don't know if anyone really cares what Marriott thinks about. So we also take that lens as, like we speak out against human trafficking, happens in hotels, it's a hospitality issue. I just gave you an example in the LGBTQ community, but there might be something, some other issue where someone may say, well, thanks for speaking up, Marriott, but who asked you?
Right. I mean, I think the public sphere is like that. It's like,
Yeah,
and that example is so perfect because people can't move around to different opportunities because of
right.
not being able to work in different states or being able to live their full lives in a different state. That impacts business negatively for you and not to mention the personal impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, let's face it, we get asked questions on, well, why are you still operating in such a country, right? Well, the reality is, let's think about that for a second. If you were to pull out, who does that help or hurt? We have hotels all around the globe. Can we pull out of a country and say, all right, well, first of all, many of you may not know this. We have 8,000 hotels around the globe. Marriott, the company, owns 10. Literally 10, not 10%, like 10 or 10. It's all owned by external owners who then pay us to run them, or they pay us to put our flag on, right? Franchising. So we are under contracts with them to run their hotels. So when we be reaching a big contract, but if we were to even be able to shut down a hotel, who does that hurt? Think of the housekeepers, who are the ones who clean the rooms. Think about the front desk associates who check people in. Think about when you walk into a hotel, the people who, hello sir, let me have your hello miss, and then take your bag and help you. Are we gonna throw them out on the streets? That doesn't help anybody. I always say you can't change the conversation unless you have a conversation or are in the conversation. So that's kind of how we look at this.
Interesting. I have a couple other questions I want to ask, but questions from the audience. Anybody have a question they want
Go ahead, I'll let you pick.
to? Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I'm Bijan Ashad, CEO of Atlas Corp. We bring leaders from all over the globe to get experiences in great organizations to make a difference in their lives. So my question is around the talent journey in your own organization, the diversity of talent that comes with it. We often find that we place people, but then they don't necessarily move on and up in the organization, and how that is related to the work you do.
Yeah, that's a huge part of what we do. You know, and I'm gonna plagiarize, I probably shouldn't say this because I'm in a university, but I'm gonna plagiarize something that I've heard. You know, there's diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? The getting people into the company is diversity, right? And I'll do this analogy. Diversity is being invited to the dance, you brought them into your company. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Belonging is being able to dance like nobody's watching. Okay? So to your example, I think a lot of companies, they look at the numbers, yeah, we're gonna go hire here, we're gonna hire here. And the quote, the people roll up, they go into the company, and no one ever talks about them ever again. And then they leave. Because they don't feel that they're at the table or invited to the table. Right? That's the inclusion part. And then when they're at the table, they feel like they have to hide some part of themselves or not be able to express their views in a way that is who they are. Right? A lot of companies are at different parts of that journey: diversity, inclusion, belonging. And you gotta take steps. So I would say if you're doing a great job hiring, but the question is though, okay, 2 years from now, where are they? Would they say that they feel like they belong here? And that's where companies sometimes fall off, I've learned. We try every day of the week to make sure it's belonging plus, you know. The other idea is equality versus equity, right? Sometimes people get confused, what's the difference, right? So there are some who will say, well, everyone got an equal opportunity, thank you. But the reality is, equality, not everyone needs the same guidance or help. So if you think about it, I have 3 kids, different shapes and sizes. I don't buy each of them a medium-sized shirt. I buy one a large, one a medium, one a small. Why? Because that's what they need. That is equity. Equality would have been, all right, here's your medium shirt, we'll see what it fits. You know?
Yeah.
So I would say that's kind of so I think it's important what you bring up, is how do you get it from not just showing up at the doorstep, how do you really feel like they belong? Yes, sir.
You're talking about the gay marriage thing. I'm trying to find out now, is the anticipated reversal of the Roe v. Wade going to address how you handle pregnancy-aged women employees at your firm? You know, women that are of the age they can get pregnant.
No, it will not impact at all whether we hire.
Or I mean, if for example, if a young woman, if the opportunity for a woman to move up is located in an anti-abortion state, for example, from a pro-choice state, will that, you follow what I'm saying?
I think so.
Yeah, you talk about the gay couple who.
Right.
Moving to anti-gay marriage state, are you having equivalent advocates brief with the Supreme Court on the Roe v. Wade thing because of the fear that some women would walk?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I see the analogy here. We're studying this. This is all late breaking, interesting new news. So I think we have to look at this. Abortion typically has been a topic where people have not really cared what Marriott International thinks. You know, we're a hotel company. But I think now with what's been discussed over the last few days, I know we have to look at that and see whether that's something that we want to speak out on. So don't have an answer yet. Very important issue, no doubt about it. And I see the analogies which you're talking about.
I think Scott in the back there.
I think that should share.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask, how does Marriott kind of address any backlash that you might get from putting your stance out there and saying that you stand one way or another, loss of business, sales?
Yeah.
And if I can piggyback like what's going on at Disney.
Sure, absolutely, great question. Yeah, we recognize, and especially now, we say something, half the country's gonna love it, half are not, right? And what it fundamentally comes back to is our culture. We put people first, we have respect for the individual, we act with integrity, and we can only have one set of rules for our associates, right? So, you know, when people say that we support the LGBTQ community, why are you doing that? That's not right. Okay, let's talk about that, right? I'm married to a woman. I have friends that marry who are married same-sex marriage. Why shouldn't they have the same healthcare benefits as I do for my wife, right? Heaven forbid my wife gets hurt. I'm not worried, but I'm not worried that she'll get healthcare, right? Because we have same-sex partner benefits, right? So I would want that my good friend who is gay, married to a man, a marriage, right? That they should be able to have those same benefits as anyone. We can't have two sets of rules. So if people don't get that, it's okay. And we're not trying to convince them. We're really not. But I'll give you an example where we did get a lot of blowback. A lot. After January 6th last year, our CEO and our government affairs team made a decision at that time that they were not going to make donations via our PAC to folks who did not recognize the severity of what happened or the election. That was an unpopular decision for half the country. But we talk about voting rights and things like those are things that really matter to us as a company and as individuals. And we just thought it was a bridge too far for folks not to recognize. And we got a lot of people angry with us. And we said, well, we understand that. Feel free to stay at another, I didn't say this, but feel free to stay someone else, but you know what? Our competitors did the exact same thing. And it's the same thing with the LGBTQ. If someone has an issue with staying with us because they don't like that, okay, we welcome all. We welcome all. You can go to any of those other corporations, but guess what? They're doing the same thing. So eventually you're gonna end up on a couch somewhere. Oh, but guess what? Airbnb does the same thing too. So, yeah.
That was my next question, was whether or not you were able to tell of any impact on your actual bottom line that, for instance, the January 6th
Yeah.
decision had on your business.
I mean, it's a little hard to track that.
Yeah.
But what I can, again, the LGBTQ example is such a clear one.
Yeah.
So back in 2014, we had put out a campaign called Love Travels. It was essentially geared initially towards the LGBTQ plus campaign community, because I mean, who doesn't love love, right? Everyone loves love, hopefully. So we have call centers around the world. So whenever we do something, whenever I'm up to something, we always send them a message, hey, look, we're putting this out, just know you may get a bunch of calls.
Right.
So here's what you should say, So back in 2014, we got a fair amount of phone calls. People say, why are you taking a stand on this? Why are you taking a stand on that? But I tell you, since then, no calls. Like in 2022, 2021, when we do things, the number of calls are it's not even a thing anymore. And we've had so many people write us messages, I'm tearing up your Marriott Bonvoy card. I'm never staying in one of your hotels ever again. Okay, fine. But for every one of those, we get 15 that say, thank you so much, Marriott, for standing up for this. Either they're gay or their son or daughter is gay or their best friend is gay.
Yeah.
And they really feel that they feel good staying and giving their money and to a corporation that matches their beliefs.
Do you get, because I can imagine having this conversation with a friend of mine and then somebody else in the organization or in the group, suppose, you're out to dinner, somebody else saying, oh, but they're just saying that, they don't really do it, doesn't really make a difference, it's just, the greenwashing.
Yeah.
How do you guys respond to that? Because I'm sure you have the evidence.
Oh, we do. Yeah, I get a lot of that. Come on, it's just, you guys are just the evil big corporate empire.
And
You
it's
guys really-
just marketing.
Yeah, it's just marketing.
Send it to marketers.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, well, look, I can tell you, do we have a marketing function that looks at segments? We bet we do. But do we also give major donations of not just money, but people power to help bring job opportunities to people, to bring that equity? I'll give you an example. We work with a transgender organization called Casa Ruby, which is downtown DC, that helps at-risk transgender people who, the rise in violence against transgender people is insane. And this group, Casa Ruby, runs a shelter. Sure, we can stroke them a check, and we do, but we also bring in volunteers from our local hotels and our local DC Business Council, that's something I manage. So when they need to get some roof work done or build something, we bring in people power. to help them do that. So that means that's money they don't have to spend. Or when they, their garden needs meeting, we bring in our people to go do them. And picture that small example towards a diverse community, but picture that around the globe. We have 107 business councils around the globe that do just this. Let's just talk about Ukraine for a minute, okay? Because I'm managing Marriott's Ukraine humanitarian response. $2.1 million, actually it's 2.5 million, it's a lot of numbers. $1 million of donations of in-kind or cash donations. We've given another 2.5 million to help World Central Kitchen, UNICEF, all those organizations, you have human trafficking organizations, because when stuff like this happens, human trafficking is really bad. We've given money to our associates because we don't have hotels in Ukraine. But here's the thing, we have Ukrainian associates who work in Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, but their families are still in Ukraine. So they're separated from their families while there's a war going on. So we've given money to help reunite their families, to get them out of Ukraine. And people may say, well, just get a car, drive over there, pick them up, and it's not that easy. There's migration costs, there's immigration costs, there's so much that goes to it. But we're helping in those ways. I have so many examples of what we can do that if folks think it's just greenwashing or rainbow washing as we're going towards Pride Month, good luck, give me a call, and I'll explain to them. I have like 100 more stories like this, where we do it though, we do things that we don't have to do, but we do it because it's our culture. Yeah.
I just remember Scott had a question.
Yes.
No worries. This actually ties in, and thanks for speaking to us. So I'm speaking later on sustainable finance. And right now, I primarily work in the climate finance space, but I know you've spoken a lot about social and governance issues.
Yeah.
Judy mentioned someone else is speaking right now on disclosures, but I wanted to hear you instead. So, does your office work with the finance team and how does the process go for disclosing these different projects that you're doing or hitting different metrics so that they would go into something that may be mandatory someday, but also if you're doing voluntary TCFD reporting?
100%. So reporting is huge in this space. And the SEC is really getting more aggressive. Their words are they want investor grade reporting on these topics, right? So the answer is we work very closely with our finance team, very, very closely. One, because as you know, CFOs these days have to personally sign, and our CFO, her name is Lady Ober, she's an amazing leader. I was in a meeting where she looked at me and goes, Apoorva, you need to get this right, because I'm not going to jail. Because they're personally liable, right? But yes, let's talk about this from the E side of environmental work. This work costs money. Being able to build in all of these different processes with new technologies so that we are reducing, greenhouse gases that go out or reducing food waste or things like that. Water usage is huge, right? It all takes money. So, you have to work with the finance people. And also we ask our owners to fund this stuff as well. So, and those are all investments that go into this reporting. We also look at our corporate contributions. So when I mentioned to you, I'm working with the NAACP on sponsoring and doing some events. Part of that comes with the contribution we're making. So that all gets tracked and gets reported on. And now look at SEC, the other section that's going on right now is about their increased scrutiny. Like we have to show so much backup now. So I told, when I sent the request for $25,000 for the check, I told the financing team, make sure you keep the check. Because you have to produce it at some point. So your answer is yes, we work really closely with finance and they're great partners with us. Yes, sir.
Thanks for being with us today.
Pleasure.
Can you talk a little bit about, you had a long career with Marriott. I don't know if you came from the Marriott or Starwood side. And the reason why I'm asking is cultural integration.
Yeah.
And on multiple levels. Obviously governance is a big part of that, but the social obviously as well. Can you talk about that piece a little bit? Particular, mergers, acquisitions, different cultures, et cetera, et cetera.
It's so important. That's a great question. So I came from the Marriott side. I've been with Marriott for 18 years almost. You've all heard that famous quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's very famous. I think Peter Drucker's, right, from Harvard Business School. He's right. Because I think, let me take a step back. When I worked at Accenture for 13 years, I was in their telecom consulting group, where you had a bunch of companies eating each other, and no one cared about culture at all. And so many of those mergers did not work, which is why we had the telecom collapse, right? What are the reasons we had that collapse? Because no one cared. They said, hey, you just throw these people and these people, put them together, figure it out. Just make sure we keep on showing revenues to Wall Street on consolidation savings, right? Marriott, our culture is our bedrock. It sounds so corporate-y for me to say it, but come spend a day with me at Marriott, you'll see it. Putting people first, respect for the individual, all those things. So when we acquired Starwood, thankfully, we found some great people who understood that. Now, they may have called it something different. Every company has their different words. In the end, what you find in the hospitality industry is people are pretty cool. I mean, like, right? They're in the business of welcoming all or being towards that. But we spent a lot of time with our Starwood friends, meeting them, talking with them, making sure that we listened, and also talked about our culture. When that was announced, Mr. Marriott, who actually, by the way, is officially retiring today as executive chairman of the board, his son, David Marriott, will be taking it. Yeah, it's actually happening as we speak. He and Arnie Sorensen, our former beloved CEO, who sadly passed away a year ago. We actually spoke here back in about 4 years ago. Amazing leader. They went up to the Starwood location and visited a bunch of hotels as well. So anytime you go to a hotel where corporate comes, usually you'll see like the staff will line up. It's like a lineup they call. And Mr. Marriott and Arnie Sorensen shook every hand and thanked everyone. And I remember I heard this story. Someone asked some of the other people, like, are they really gonna like shake everyone's hand and spend the time? They're like, absolutely. Like that's the way they are. And that's the way Tony Capuano, our CEO, the new CEO is. Because that's what our culture is. I always maintain that if Mr. Marriott had to choose between a housekeeper and me, he'd take the housekeeper any day. Because he'd probably say, I know what he does, the housekeeper does. I'm not quite sure what you do, but that is part of our culture, right? When we've had to make really hard decisions in the past, 2020, I mean, that killed the hospitality industry, killed it. I want all of you to go to YouTube and Google Arnie Sorensen 2020 speech, where he gave us a 10-minute message to the associates, bring your Kleenex. Yeah. Because you saw a guy, Arnie Sorensen, who was battling pancreatic cancer at the time. He usually has a full head of hair, all hair was gone, thin as a rail, but talking about how hard this is and being 100% transparent on what this meant to the company and our associates. Bringing tissues, because you'll dab your eyes. And he talks so much about how the hardest thing he's ever had to do in his entire career was talk to associates on how this pandemic is going to impact their careers. And even when people got furloughed or had to lose their jobs, the efforts the company did to give outplacement help. Or you look, I got furloughed for 6 weeks, okay? It was not a happy time for me, okay? But even then, the company made sure that they covered my healthcare benefits, so my kids and family would still have healthcare. We talk a lot about culture, but we back it up with actions. And I hope this answers your question, but that's so important. And what we have found when you bring people into an organization, they don't kind of get that. They don't kind of last too long with us. And it is true. One of the things I do every year, our company does, is we have an associate engagement survey. Every year we do a survey, anonymous survey of all of our associates. And it's anonymous, but so I will never know what my people said individually, but trust me, every year I get the roll up. And then every year, HR and my boss will sit with me and say, all right, Gordon, let's see how you're engaging your people. And it impacts my career, because if I'm known as a guy who's not a caring, empathetic, nurturing leader who also delivers business results, people say, oh, what's going on here? Or it also impacts my paycheck. Part of what goes into my paycheck and my bonus is my score on that. So I'm doubly incented to do this. But typically, people who don't buy our culture don't last long. We're okay with that. Like that. Thank you.
I have to say, I had the pleasure of doing some exec ed for some Marriott
Yeah.
general managers. And they were the kindest people. I was there to serve them, but they kept saying, oh, did you really want the lamb? I'll switch plates with you. I'm like, no, I'm here to
Yeah.
to be your host. And they're like, no, let me take care of it.
Yeah. No, it's actually, no, you.
Yeah, it was really.
But there's something about hospitality, when it gets in your blood, it's just something that people love. It's fun, you get to travel around the world and, it's a really cool thing.
So, let me see, maybe one or two, I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then maybe I'll give you a last round to give some
Sure.
advice to young folks alike. So, when we think about diversity, my colleague Rob and I have been working on this bit with our executive MBA program. And what I'm trying to open my mind up to is, I've always been a place of, does anybody care what Judy has to say about diversity? I'm a straight white woman, and white women have their own set of challenges, but we're not at the forefront of the diversity challenges that exist in the world today. So what do organizations, what do people need from people like me? How can we help? How can we be true allies and advocates and make sure we stay away from performative allyship?
Yeah.
And do you have any tips for maybe some of us in the audience who are?
Sure. First thing I'll say is to listen. Still listen. When you think about after George Floyd's murder in 2020, there was a big hubbub around diversity, inclusion, and everyone was like, okay, we're gonna do this, and this. We're gonna have these meetings with our associates, we're gonna tell them all this, we're gonna tell them. People just wanted to be heard. So it was just like, thank you for this action. But I want you to, let me tell you about my experience as an Indian man or a Black woman or a Black man in the United States. Let me explain to you what I have gone through, the microaggressions that I'm speaking for diverse, kind of people of color here. The 10 things that have happened to me before I even walk through the door. I just want you to understand that, right? So people need to listen first and make sure help people feel like they're being heard, and then take and process it and come up with programs based on that, Now, and when I say to listen, I don't mean it like condescendingly. It's just that people were just so concerned and wanted to do something that I said, hold on a second, just listen first. I think someone like you, straight white, we need, in the diversity space, we need everyone on board with this. Everybody. We need straight white men, we need straight white women, we need everybody, everyone in this room. This is everyone's job. And here's the reason, especially why the majority can be helpful. You all have access to things. You have access to rooms that maybe others don't. You have access. So I would say, use that access, use that privilege to speak up on these topics. Make sure that it's at the table and gets infused in an organization everywhere. Everywhere. It's like what Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg said. Someone asked her, like, well, how many places should women be involved? She said all. And I agree with her 100%. And I would say the same thing around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Every place. Why? One, it's the right thing to do. We all know that. But two, look at the demographics of your student body. Look at the demographics of customers. Look at the demographics of the United States. Like look at the census that just happened. And if you don't want to look at 2020 census, look at 2010s. The signals were there even back then. So that's what I would say. Everyone has a role to play. That's what we talk about at Marriott, is no matter who you are, top of the org chart, middle or bottom, you need to advocate and talk about this. Everyone can find their own way to do it. I'm not asking everyone to do what I'm doing.
Right.
But if you manage someone, take that extra step to understand maybe where they're coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe a couple tips, words of advice for the students in the audience?
I told myself I wouldn't bring the dad vibes too much.
Okay.
But I guess I have to.
I'm forcing you into it.
You're forcing me into it? Okay, she's asking me. I guess a couple things I wish people had told me back when, LinkedIn actually did this great feature like a couple years ago, is what advice you would give the 21-year-old version of yourself. It was really good. I don't think I still have it, but it was really excellent. I think, and people have heard me say this before, power of relationships is very important. It's very important. Not everything can we do get done via fun. So get out there, join organizations, be part of things, meet people, shake hands with people. You never know who you're gonna meet. That's the first thing. I think, you know, a quote I like that someone had told me, I wish someone had told me, is always be a first-rate version of yourself and never a second-rate version of somebody else. I wish someone had told me that. So I think, you know, it's, and also, as you take on opportunities, sometimes figuring out that you don't like something is just as valuable as figuring out that you do like something, right? Sometimes people discount it, and I think especially for younger students today, there's so much pressure to go, yes, figure this out, figure that out. I don't know, I always wish someone had told me these things.
Those are good ones, I like them. So,
Yeah.
get out there, build personal
I think it's
relationships,
important.
be a first-rate version of yourself rather than a second-rate version of somebody else,
Yeah,
and figure out what you don't like. So maybe take a course that you're curious about, and even if you end up not liking it, count it as a win.
yeah, that's
And
exactly
now
right.
you know, I don't like that.
Yeah, I remember I did an internship when I was a junior at Maryland. It was with a company that doesn't exist anymore, it was called NCR Corporation.
Oh, yeah.
So remember the National Cash Register. So if you look at today's cash registers, they probably are still made by this company called NCR, but now they're much more digitized, right? But it was the old school cash registers. And I was in there, you guys are gonna laugh, this is gonna date me. It was a group called the Media Products Division. And you know what they sold? Fax paper. Nice. I don't even know if anyone has a fax machine anymore. I don't know, but they sold that fax paper. So I was a marketing guy. So I was in their sales department. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. I don't wanna sit in the office all day. I'm gonna go out and meet people and drive and I went on a couple sales calls with a rep. And I did it for like two months. I was like, I don't like this. Yeah, I just like, you know, I'm always like convincing people, and I'm negotiating on price, and I'm like, I have to drive like from here to, I don't know, 50 miles away in rush hour. They always give me the one, oh, go talk to that guy, see what he thinks. 8 a.m. And then to be told, nah, sorry, your price is 5 cents more than the other guy, so we're gonna go with the other guy. But let me explain to you fax machines and fax paper and why ours is better. And I remember the guy told me, you should say, tell them that the words will come off the page way better on our fax paper. So anyway, I realized that, you know what, maybe this line of sales is not for me. But that was fine. I learned about it. It's okay, you know, not my cup of tea. There are other people who are amazingly great salespeople, not me. All right.
Let's give a Porter a round of applause. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and feel free to link to your relationships, feel free to LinkedIn connect with me, and I'm always happy to come back. As I said, it was an in-town gig, so I'm happy to drive 20 minutes from Bethesda to come do this anytime you want. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right.
All right.